on this episode of the Sorority Chat podcast.
We have been hearing a lot about this enrollment cliff and gloom and doom. Everything was supposed to be bottoming out. Our numbers are growing across the board. If we look at our total undergraduate membership numbers in our 26 organizations, the interest is definitely there.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Sorority Chat. I'm Liz Toombs, a designer and sorority alum who's obsessed with all things Greek life. My mission? To bring you real conversations, smart insights, and fun stories that help make sorority living even better. So grab your favorite beverage, get comfy, and let's chat. Welcome back, friends. Joining me today is Dani Weatherford, the CEO of the National Panhellenic Conference. Dani's a former attorney turned higher education admin and sorority advocate, and she is leading NPC's mission to make sorority recruitment more inclusive, authentic, and relevant to Gen Z women. And I'm very excited to hear all about that work today. Welcome, Dani.
Thanks, Liz. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, like I said, I'm excited to hear about what's going on. I know there's a lot of research happening to keep recruitment relevant, to make sure that the next generation of women coming through sorority organizations, they're really engaged and we're appealing to them. So I want to hear what you're finding in the research. Like, what's the data telling us?
Yeah, it is. It's super exciting. Recruitment is, a process that sorority women have been participating in from both sides as a potential new member and as a chapter member for decades. Mm-hmm. And it was developed a long time ago, and it has worked well for us for decades. Mm-hmm. But as generations change, we do need to think about what best meets their needs as they're coming onto college campuses. The women who are participating in recruitment and joining our organizations now experienced COVID as junior high and high school women. The research is telling us that they're actually feeling lonely, and they've had a lonelier kind of high school experience. And so they are in desperate need of a sense of community and belonging. And as they're coming kind of onto the campus grounds and they're looking for those communities, that sense of belonging, a place that they can find a home and can make really strong connections. And we know that sorority offers those connections, and that women who are members of our organizations in a lot of research and studies do show up as feeling a stronger sense of connection and less lonely than unaffiliated women. So we want to improve the recruitment process so that more women feel like sorority is a place for them and that recruitment is an experience that will welcome them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that when I went through school, and I went to the University of Kentucky, and I'm an Alpha Gamma Delta, I chose to go through recruitment because I wanted to go to a large school, but needed that place to plug in because I didn't want to get lost in the shuffle. So it's exactly what you're describing was my driver for going through the process. And I definitely found my home. I found that community, and I'm sure that it helped me to stay the course through my 4 years in school. And I know exactly what you're talking about with the loneliness factor. I'm hearing it from a lot of folks throughout this industry. And I was teaching at the collegiate level in 2020 and could see the shift in the students when we went from in-person to on Zoom classes. And it was a huge shift.
Yes. And even then, as I was talking to journalists and other folks in the middle of COVID, or as students were starting to return back to school, that our experience was something, even in those moments in the middle of it, where it was an experience that could help women, it could help students that were coming onto campus. And even if the experience was a virtual one, they were finding some connection. They weren't walking to class and they weren't sitting next to people and building new friendships, but they could connect because they were having chapter meetings via Zoom. Maybe they hadn't met those women in person yet, but they were building relationships.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm curious because when you talked about the students today, they're lonely, they're trying to find that connection. Do you feel like they're equipped to come through the in-person recruitment process, or is there any kind of disconnect that's showing up there?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'm not sure that there's a disconnect because of the loneliness factor, although there could be. But the research that was conducted last year by our partners, the Foundation for Fraternal Excellence and the Amplifying Sorority campaign, that research tells us that women are not today's high school or rising college freshmen, that they're not super fans of the recruitment process, that they have a sense of kind of try before you buy. And so a recruitment process where you visit every chapter and make a decision at the end of that process may not be the process that is most appealing to them. And they tend to think that based on what I think is what they're seeing on social media about recruitment, that the experience is one-sided and full of judgment, where we believe it's a mutual selection process,
right,
that women get to choose which chapters they're returning to after the first round of recruitment, and the chapters get to decide which women they want to invite back. So it works on both ways. However, I'm not sure that our community has done the best job of really educating potential members about what that experience looks like and feels like. So those are some of the conversations that as a conference we're trying to have, thinking about the future of recruitment. Can we make some changes so that it is seen as a more warm and welcoming and inclusive process? We have a lot of university administrators and parents and even women going through recruitment that believe that the process is exclusive, I'll say cutthroat, but our data shows that very few women are actually released by chapters. It happens the other way around. Women are choosing to drop out of the recruitment process, or they're choosing not to go back to some of the chapters that they've been invited to. Today's woman is a savvy woman, and she has a sense of maybe which chapter she wants to go to. And so she's not always going to give others the opportunity to kind of impress her. And so we need to do a better job with that as well.
So you said that maybe the way that traditional recruitment has been set up is not appealing to today's students. So are you getting a sense of what could be done and like action steps to take to change how that process goes? And what does that look like?
What it looks like, I'm not 100% sure yet. We're having lots of conversations about that. The fully structured recruitment process that most people think is recruitment doesn't happen on every campus across the country.
Right.
There are campuses right now that have a partially structured recruitment, which means it's just a little less formal. It might be spread apart. The events might be, spread further apart. It's not like a 7-3-2 experience of you have to go to 7 events, 3-2. And it's a little spread apart. Or we have continuous recruitment, which happens often on campuses that are smaller communities and maybe have fewer women who want to go through recruitment. And then, of course, we have continuous open bidding that happens in a non-primary recruitment term. So we have lots of different styles now of how a woman might learn about a chapter on her campus and eventually become a member. And we used to have more styles. I would say probably about 9 or 10 years ago, we kind of got rid of one of them. It was called minimally structured recruitment, which isn't much different from partially structured recruitment. And so we were trying to make the process a little bit more streamlined. But since COVID, I think we have learned that there is an opportunity to make changes During COVID, all of our campuses went to a virtual recruitment. There are still some campuses, because of the size, the community starts recruitment with a video round. When we moved to video in the middle of COVID, most people were not fans of it. But it has turned out to serve its purpose for some campuses where they have a very large community and tons of women going through recruitment. And it's a way to make those initial introductions from both the chapter to the PNMs and the PNMs to the chapter. But we're thinking about what comes next at the member organization level and at NPC. Really, probably for the last 8 months, we've been surveying our national organization leaders about what they would like to see with the future of recruitment. I think we're going to do more focus groups with potential new members and current collegiate women and the university administrators and campus partners. So there's a lot of work that we still have to do to try to figure out what those next steps look like. But we do want recruitment to feel like a warm and welcoming experience. We want to open our sisterhood to more women, and that means that we need to make it easier for them to see themselves as part of our community.
So you've mentioned that a couple of times, that as the organization, we could do better at showing them what the potential is and what that looks like. And so are there tangible things that come to mind or that you're seeing that chapters could start doing now to make them, educate PNMs better?
So there are a couple of things that we have started and we're continuing to think about. We have really helped our communities across the country in the last 3 or 4 years really ramp up their marketing, particularly their digital marketing. NPC has given grants to some of our campus communities to run digital marketing that's focused on unaffiliated women on their campuses. And we're matching those college Panhellenic officers up with marketing professionals from our community to learn how to do that. So it's really a win-win situation. Those women who maybe are serving as their director of public relations or communications for their college Panhellenics, they're learning. It's almost like an internship. They're matched up with a woman who is going to teach them the ins and outs of creating digital advertisement, placing digital advertisements. And the program has been so successful. We have had campuses that maybe didn't make it into our first cut of campuses that we were offering grants to ask how they could learn. So we have grown that program over the course of the last 3 years. And now we have on-demand education for college Panhellenics that maybe can afford to purchase their own ads that don't need the grant dollars from us. And then we are continuing to offer grants. I think the other thing that we're doing is really using collegiate women, current collegiate women, to tell our story better. So on our website, the sororitylife.com, we have a bunch of content creators who are current women who are chapter members, chapter officers, college Panhellenic officers who are developing the content for that website. And that's where we push every potential new member that we are in contact with all year. Go there, learn about the sorority experience from current women, kind of look at some of those articles that are Mythbuster articles to kind of overcome some of the pop culture memes that are out there about sorority life. And we're actually just starting some new influencer programs as well on social media with women across the country who are members of our organizations, who have their own following, who can provide better education. Of course, the Rush Talk videos are fun and the Get Ready With Me videos, but they're not particularly educational about the recruitment process. So we very much want women to continue to do that myth busting with what they're posting and talk about the experience and help potential members understand that recruitment looks different on every single campus. What you experienced at Kentucky is very different from what I experienced at DePaul University, which is a small liberal arts school here in Indiana. And we want potential new members to understand that if they're not going to Kentucky or Alabama because they're not looking for a large public SEC school, that the sorority experience might look different on a different campus. And we know that there are women who are looking for that traditional sorority experience.
Yeah.
But we also know that there are women in this generation who are very focused on academics and making a straight line between graduating from high school and going to med school. And we need them to know that the sorority experience can be helpful to them in meeting their goals as well. So we have to talk about those different experiences and how it looks different on different campuses and in different chapters. And it's also what you make of it. We all know that. And so a woman who is very focused on academics can remain very focused on academics, while another woman who is an athlete can also do that. And those opportunities are always available.
I'm glad that you said that, because I didn't realize how different recruitment could be from campus to campus until I got into doing the design for these houses. And then just hearing from the chapter members, I learned so much, or have learned over the last 15, 16 years, and still continue to learn as things change. Like, I wasn't even aware that there was deferred recruitment or spring recruitment, all these things. It's just like you were talking about all the different types. So I think it's great the more that people can learn about it and see how it varies, because campus culture and then chapter culture on that campus is very unique, just like the members within it. And so there's a college for everyone. There's an organization for everyone. You know, there's always a place to plug in and fit in. And I'm glad that you even pointed out about the athletic side of things, because I think there's a big assumption that, well, if I'm an athlete, I can't make the commitments to my, sorority organization, or vice versa. So it's either or. And that's not always the case.
It's not. I think on some campuses, and unfortunately, I will say with some coaches, they will make a decision for their players and say that you can't join one of these organizations. And I think that's unfortunate, because there is a place for those women in our organizations.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So you highlighted what chapters could be doing right now. What are some things that they should avoid doing because it repels Gen Z P&Ms, or, it's not going to be a fit for them?
That's a really interesting question, because it's not something that we have spent a lot of time or focus on.
Okay.
We've really wanted to encourage them to engage in the marketing. But I will say that digital marketing isn't always the answer. And we know that on some campuses, the communities have lost some of that maybe muscle memory about tabling in the middle of the quad to promote the sorority experience, or wearing their letters, or really engaging as a Panhellenic community to the chapters to all put an activity on together to promote the sorority experience. So we are also encouraging them to do those things that maybe were more popular in the 90s or the early 2000s, but they could be a good way for them to promote their community and joining on their campuses.
And it's such a simple thing to go set that table up, just talk to folks, be involved. It reminds me of on Pitch Perfect, when they're all out there, all the different a cappella groups, and they're trying to recruit folks. Like, that was the first thing that came to mind, but so simple, but very effective.
Well, it's just like sheet signs. I mean, I think that most folks, if they think back to their college experience and sheet signs on every fraternity and sorority house, and in some campuses they're still doing that, and others they're not. But there are chapters that are really good about changing up their signs, and they're very creative, and it's tells a story about that particular chapter from the work that they do. And I think that kind of, perhaps we'll call it analog marketing, is still very useful on campuses today.
And the amount of banner painting, sheet signs, conversations that I have to have within my work to make sure we have a place designated for the supplies and somewhere you can paint those things. It's funny how much that comes up in conversation. Sure. So for years, we've been hearing about this enrollment cliff and drops in sorority membership. And it sort of feels like doom and gloom to me.
Sure.
And so I'm curious the reality of what NPC is seeing on that front.
So, we have been hearing a lot about this enrollment cliff and gloom and doom. And we have been watching our numbers very closely. And we've been watching what's been happening across higher ed. And we did start to see a decline in membership numbers probably after 2017. That was our high water mark. We had been seeing numbers growing at double digits in some years for the interest in the sorority experience. And starting around 2017, those numbers started to come down. Maybe it was 1%, maybe it was 2%. And then COVID hit and nobody knew exactly what was going to happen. And that enrollment cliff was still being predicted for 2025. So right about now is when everything was supposed to be bottoming out. Our numbers are growing. For the past 2 years, we have seen growth across the board. Now, that doesn't mean every chapter or every campus, but if we look at our total undergraduate membership numbers in our 26 organizations, last year we grew by 3% over the prior year, and this year we grew by another 5%. So the interest is definitely there. And perhaps our marketing efforts are helping to push that along. But we have more women registering to participate in recruitment. We have more women who are finishing the process and joining one of our organizations, and maybe also participating in, COB and joining through a more informal process that might be the process that is more appealing to them. So the campuses are seeing reductions in enrollment on certain campuses. I think in the South, particularly in the SEC, still tons of growth. And I think that some of those schools recruit based on, the interest in coming and being part of the Greek community. So they are wonderful partners for us.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that those partnerships work really well together, and it's a reciprocal relationship. Call me Pollyanna, but I have a hard time thinking we'll ever really have a straight drop off because people are always clamoring for that community. And, we're talking about currently it's loneliness and, people want to have that place to plug in. And I think that's never going to change at all.
I think you're absolutely correct. And it might change. The experience might look a little bit different.
Agreed.
But I don't think it's going to go away. And we might have our ups and downs. And if we look at the history of our organizations, there have been eras where our experience was more popular than others. And that might, reflect things happening in the culture around us and what's happening generally on higher ed campuses and with faculty and administration. But there is, I believe, always going to be an interest in, women coming together and having that kind of community.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so, too. I'm curious if you know this from the research, and this may be putting you on the spot, but when was the kind of peak of Greek life? And I know you said in 2017 we hit a great enrollment, but before that, were there other periods of highs as well? And I'm curious what life looked like and culture looked like at those points.
Yeah, it has kind of come up and down. We have a historical kind of review of NPC. It's called Adventure in Friendship, and it kind of outlines that. Something that's on our website if folks want to go and look at it and kind of read about the history of the experience starting in 1902. So we're coming up soon on a big anniversary for the conference. But I think interest got pretty high in the 90s and then again got really high, like I said, in 2015, 2017, where it was just growing year after year. We saw that little kind of, fall over the last couple of years, but I think it's going to come back up. I think that we're on an upward trend right now, and that we'll continue to see growth for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of geek out over that stuff. It's just fun to look back and to see the trends of things and just note what's happening. And then you can kind of apply your own experience?
I think that it's interesting, from a conference perspective, we had organizations that were part of the conference back in 1902, and we've had other organizations join us over time.
Yeah.
And we've had some of our organizations combine. And I think that happens as interest kind of grows and fades as well. And we always have hope that there's going to be additional organizations that are developing and joining our conference in the future. So that would be another really awesome point in our history if we could grow the number of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that too. When looking ahead, 5 years, how would you like to see recruitment evolve, and what are some things that are being put into place to give that momentum?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to figure out what it will look like. Mm-hmm. I do think that there will likely be more of those informal opportunities that we have to figure out how to. Right now, I think the word that gets used often is a stigma. There is a stigma attached to what we call continuous open bidding, that if a chapter is extending bids in that fashion outside of the primary recruitment period, that there's something wrong, that they didn't excel during recruitment, or that women didn't want to join their chapters. That's not necessarily the case. Some organizations are so masterful at COB and going and finding those women who the very structured, formal process was intimidating to them. They didn't want to join an organization in that way. That's not who they are as a person. But when those chapters are going to look for those women to bring them into the sisterhood and say, hey, do you want to come over to dinner? Do you want to meet some of our women? Are you interested in joining? That's a way to get those women who are going to be fabulous members. It just wasn't a good fit for them to go through the full process. Other chapters are not as good at doing that kind of informal recruiting, but I know that all of our member organizations are more focused on it right now, trying to figure out how to get their chapters to feel comfortable doing it if it's not something that they've always done in the past. And it also gives our chapters just a little bit more opportunity to grow. If they've had some women who maybe have transferred away, or for whatever reason, they have some space in the chapter, and participating in those informal recruitment opportunities and bringing women in at different points in the year, I think that we will grow from that, and we have to figure it out. But I think that that's probably the path. Our recruitment will look more and more like that. Not everywhere. The University of Alabama cannot move away from a fully structured recruitment. They just can't. The University of Kentucky can't. But some other schools maybe could. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the fun of the process is to sort it out, to look at who you're serving and what it is that they need and how it all translates out. That's part of the process. And I'm glad that you pointed that out about COB, because I do agree that there can be a stigma attached to it. But I am hearing that change, just like the things that you described. And so I'm so glad that you shared that for folks to hear, because if you're not used to that, you're not probably thinking about that side of things. And I think there's a lot of good education there for people just who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah.
How, if people want to get clued in on the research, they want to see what y'all are doing or learn about anything related to NPC, Dani, how can they do that?
So we have two different websites that really are focused on different audiences. So npcwomen.org, that's for the National Panhellenic Conference. That's really where our research is housed in partnership with the Foundation for Fraternal Excellence and the Amplifying Sorority campaign. That's where we have NPC's position statements, our resource library, education, really for member organizations, volunteers, current chapter women. So that's kind of like our internal focusing website, but it's very external. But as I mentioned earlier, the sororitylife.com is that website that is very external focused, and it is filled with the content that is developed by current members. And it's really focused on potential new members and their caregivers to learn about the sorority experience, to learn about how recruitment might look different on the campuses that they are considering. And it's a way for us also to help connect them to the College Panhellenic Association on the campus where they may choose to enroll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great info. And then you all have social accounts too, right? What platforms?
Yes. So for all of the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and knowing that each one of those have a different audience, we have NPC women accounts and the Sorority Life accounts on all of those. And, we are trying a new pilot right now, trying to get and reach caregivers specifically through Facebook. Okay. So we're not using Facebook anymore to really reach out to the potential new members, right. But we have a completely different set of messaging that we're trying to figure out if that's the right way to go, because we know that today's generation of women are very close to their parents, and their parents may be more influential even than the social media that they consume. And so we want to make sure that we are reaching those caregivers as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the research is obviously working because it's telling you who to target on each of those and who to speak to. And on the conversation of social media, when you were talking previously about less formal gatherings and recruitment process, I'm hearing a lot from a business standpoint that the more informal social media posts are connecting with people too. So it's really interesting to hear from all these different places that the informality is what's appealing as opposed to the more polished and professional sounding things. So I think there's an interesting takeaway there about us as people right now.
It's that authenticity. Are people like showing up with, their hair in a ponytail and no makeup on and kind of telling their story? And, there's plenty of that happens in the sorority world. And so we're hoping that some of these women that we're working with now to create these educational posts, it will be, we hope, very transparent and authentic to tell their story and help other women learn again.
Yeah.
Recruitment looks different on every campus. It's kind of my drumbeat these days because there's so much talk right now, and it's perfectly fine talk about recruitment in the SEC. But recruitment looks very different in the Pacific Northwest or in New England or in the Mid-Atlantic, wherever you want to point to in the country. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't feel the same. And we want those women across the country to understand that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Dani, I appreciate you making time to come on and kind of share the progress of the research and how you all are appealing to Gen Z. I know I'm looking forward to continuing to follow it on social and otherwise, and we'll make sure that we have all of those websites and social media platforms listed out in the show notes so people can follow along as well. But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Welcome to Liz's House Hot Takes. This is where I take the lessons I've learned over the last 16 years of designing Greek houses and offer you my pro tips. Here's today's house hot take. Make your printer station actually cute. Even the office-y stuff can be part of the vibe in your chapter house. Tuck the printer in a cabinet, use gold or acrylic organizers for paper and supplies, and hang an inspiring quote above the space. Functional does not have to mean boring. Thanks for listening to another House Hot Take. For more inspiration, check out the PDR Interiors Instagram or TikTok. I'm Liz Toombs, and this is the Sorority Chat podcast. Catch you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening on a podcast platform, make sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. And if you got something out of today's conversation, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. It helps us reach more listeners just like you. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out this video right here or this one over here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us out. On that note, I'm Liz Toombs with Sorority Chat, and I'll see you on the next one. This podcast is produced by Collier Landry for Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Liz Toombs.